Oh. Good afternoon. If I can ask everyone to take their seats, we're going to start in just a couple of minutes, but we need you just nicely seated so we can see what seats are remaining. You can keep talking, just talk while you're seated. Thanks.
To wait to turn on the tape. Okay, good. All right, welcome. Ooh. I'm Amy Shaw. I'm the Senior Vice President here at the Nine Network of Public Media, and I'm really happy to welcome all of you today. Quickly, just a big word of thanks to Wyman, our terrific partner on so many initiatives right now, and I know you're going to hear lots of thanks and praise for lots of people. It's just good to be in this room today. If you look around at all the great faces, we're all working towards some amazing things. And actually, I have to script myself because if not, I will wax poetic about all kinds of things. I'm just always happy to welcome people into this beautiful space. And the reason being is that we're really about facilitating the kinds of conversations across our community that mean something and that ultimately move our community to a new place. And so today, that's what we're going to be doing. They're so lovely over here. It's like, I feel like we're on the Price is Right, or the dating game. It's the dating game, isn't it? Yeah. I'm dating myself here. All you young people won't know what that is at all, so just laugh. So today is especially important because the Saigh Symposium is so aligned with this idea of youth outcomes and all the conversations that we've been having across our community. So we're thrilled to be with you. At the Nine Network, we've broadened our role from the customary television station to be much more around facilitating those kinds of conversations that produce change. We're an organization that's outwardly focused. We're listening to the community and bringing the community together to have these kinds of important conversations that do something. The expansion of our role is really at the heart of some work that we've been working on for the last 2 years with many of you in the room, and that's our American Graduate Initiative. And I say our, not as our, the Nine Network, but our as our community initiative. As you may be aware, the Nine Network developed an initiative called American Graduate. It's a national initiative. There's over 75 public television and radio stations that are doing this work around the country as we speak, with over 1,000 community partners who are working on this, also with a lot of fantastic national organizations who are very dedicated to improving youth outcomes as well. So we're thrilled to be a part of that. But the work that's really most important is our work here in St. Louis, because it's really that work that serves as the foundation for everything that's happening nationally. So in our region, we're partnered with more than 50 community organizations. Many of you are in the room, so thank you. It's great to be with you. And Wyman, of course, is one of our terrific partners. The goal, it's going to sound really familiar to a lot of you. There's not a lot of rocket science to this, but it is, I think, a good way to make explicit what we're really all trying to do together, which is work together to help young people graduate high school prepared academically, socially, emotionally, culturally, for post-secondary, for a career, to be contributing citizens, not only to our community, but to our country. We need more of that. And these bright faces of young people make me really happy that we're going to be on the right path for that. So it's really this cradle to career approach that I know many of you embrace. And I do want to share just very quickly over the last couple of years the work on American Graduate. We've actually broadcast 143 hours of content that's related to improving youth outcomes over the last 2 years. We've created, wait for this number, it's a big one, 320 million media impressions. And what that means is a lot of people saw a lot of messages a lot of times, which is good because it takes people a lot to hear these things over and over and over again to set the context for improving outcomes for young people. More importantly, of those surveyed, our audience, there was a 75% increase in awareness around improving youth outcomes and a 50% awareness increase in how to improve solutions, how to address and improve outcomes for young people. What are those solutions that we really need to look at? The same numbers were really true for people understanding these, and that's really what we're trying to do here is help people become more aware of, understand, take action around improving outcomes for our region's young people, all of our region's young people. Also, our community partners really reported that the consistency and intensity of messaging around this, the content that we've broadcast, has really helped people understand the complexity of all issues related to outcomes for youth. And I share this with you not to pat our own back, because we did this together. That's the most important thing. We did this together. Networks of community partners who are joining together for common cause. And I implore you to think not of our work here at the 9 Network around American Graduate as just another initiative. It's really about setting the context for how we're going to work together effectively on something much larger, and that's the conversation that we're having here today. It's an exciting journey that we're on together, and we're thrilled to be doing it with you to work to align our work so that we're improving our outcomes for young people. You get $1 for every time I said outcomes, if anybody counted, and youth. So we're really pleased to be with you today, and I'm very pleased to introduce our colleague Allison Williams from Wyman Center, the Senior Vice President. Thank you.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome you to our 4th annual Saigh Symposium on Teen Development. Before we dig into this afternoon's content, we want to make sure we have a few acknowledgments for folks. First, a big thank you to our friends at the Saigh Foundation. This is the 4th year of our Saigh Symposium on Teen Development. Each year, our topic gets a little bit more intense and more targeted on behalf of the community. Each year, our audience grows, and each year, our reach grows as well. So thank you for your leadership, and for enabling this to happen. We also want to thank our colleagues at the 9 Network. We are in their home and in their space, but they have opened up their home and space and mission to folks across the St. Louis community. Those of you who know me well know I'm a big public media person. I'm a little devoid on pop culture because I listen to so much public radio and watch so much public media, but I firmly believe there is no finer public media station in the country, and we are very fortunate to have that kind of a gem right here in our backyard. Thank you, Amy. I want to say thank you to the Brown School of Social Work at Washington University. Amanda Moore McBride, unfortunately, is not able to be here with us this afternoon. She has broken her foot and really needed to rest a little bit. So we send our thoughts to her, but they're helping to support the reception that we'll have afterwards, and in our community have certainly been a leader in terms of policy practice, the community schools movement in the St. Louis region, and so we thank them for their support. We'd like to thank Starsky Wilson from the Deaconess Foundation for facilitating our conversation this afternoon, and of course Sue Gallagher, Jean Walker, Jairus Cater, who have joined us from across the country as their communities have really delved into this collective impact work to share their perspectives and their learnings with us. I'd like to thank Wyman Center board members. Beth Tiffin is with us this afternoon from Wells Fargo. Beth chairs our Wyman Center St. Louis committee, really helping to guide our work in this area. And our board has really pushed us over the last few years to consider the role that advocacy plays in our mission and really achieving outcomes for young people. So we thank you all for that leadership and that involvement. I want to make sure to give a really important nod to young people from Wyman's teen leadership and teen outreach programs who are here today, as well as young people from the cultural leadership program who have joined us today. Your voice is an important part of this conversation, and we look forward to that as we move on. Finally, thank you to you. Thank you for taking time out on this afternoon as you prepare to cheer the Cardinals on to win number 3 in the World Series. So we hope that this afternoon we're really able to engage your thinking before you head out the doors in this conversation. So why are we doing this today? At Wyman, we have been really energized about the conversations we have heard in this community over the past couple of years from among practitioners, among schools, among citizens, among funders, among the corporate community, among our faith-based leaders in saying, how do we create bigger, better, broader goals for young people in this region? How do we work differently together in order to accomplish those? And what does all of this mean? Many folks talk about that as a collective impact approach, and so that's what we are here to educate everyone on and to bring our speakers' perspective on. The St. Louis region has joined communities across the country in really recognizing this importance of thinking holistically, thinking as a region, thinking about from cradle to career, what do we need to create and do and support and sustain on behalf of and with our young people to truly be the kind of thriving community that we want to be. So we'll start this afternoon with a quick Collective Impact 101 to make sure we're all on the same page in terms of this framework. Starsky then will help to facilitate a conversation. We'll hear from each of our three marvelous guests around the work that's going on in their communities. We'll hear about the strengths, we'll hear about the challenges, and we'll hear about where they're at. We'll then have about 45 minutes for a conversation with our audience. And this is the part that's really important. We don't want to do the Saigh Symposium on really thinking about collective impact and just sit here and talk at people. We have phenomenal thinking in our room. We have phenomenal leadership, and we need you to really engage in that conversation. So we invite your questions, your thoughts, your comments. If you're tech savvy, we do have a hashtag that we're using. It's on both sides of the room, AmGradSTL. So feel free to tweet comments and questions. A member of our staff team will even bring some of those questions in as well. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce Desiree Coleman from Wells Fargo.
Good afternoon. My name is Desiree Coleman, and on behalf of Wells Fargo Advisors, I'd like to provide you with a little bit of context on collective impact. I'm from St. Louis, but I come to you by way of Washington, D.C., where I spent about 8 years working as an administrator at a government agency. And my work to support youth in the juvenile justice system was grueling. And the one thing that I learned very quickly is that no one agency can do it alone. And you really do need the support of various community stakeholders to support young people. So when I think about the mental health, the child welfare, the school, the nonprofit, and the social services community, it really does take a village. Presently, my work in corporate community affairs focus on building strong partnerships. And that's why I'm so excited about the talk about collective impact. When you look at communities across the country who are engaging in collective impact, there are a couple of themes that come out. They have a collective, they have a common agenda, shared measurements, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communication, and background supports. And so when you think about helping young people successfully transition to adulthood, these are the elements that you need to allow that to succeed. Presently in our region, we have high school graduation rates of 57, 67, 69, and 77%. And in terms of post-secondary education, we have a 38% achievement rate, so there is much work to be done. However, in St. Louis, there are several examples of organizations and collaborations that really demonstrate collective impact. The St. Louis Graduates is one example, and it's supporting low-income students and helping them to earn a post-secondary degree. And also the 24-1 initiative that Beyond Housing initiates is building strong communities and families in the Normandy School District. And when you look at collective impact, the cradle to career pipeline is what we need to think about, the data and the policy and the practice to help young people succeed. So as you listen to the panel today and reflect, think about what you'd like to see in our region, and think about what you can take from our discussion today to build bigger goals, broader partnerships, and bolder actions to improve outcomes for today's youth. And with that, I would like to introduce Starsky Wilskin, President and CEO of the Deaconess Foundation, who will moderate our discussion. Starsky.
You never want to begin with a preacher snafu, especially when the preacher's here to facilitate, not to speak. So I'm just going to sit this down and get to what's more important. I'll say just a couple of words about why we're interested in this conversation at Deaconess Foundation, and it really is pretty clear. First of all, we're interested because there are great partners in this conversation. We thank Wyman and Saigh Foundation and the Brown School and Nine Network for convening this dialogue on today, particularly at this time that I think is more than fortuitous for us, that brings us all together and kind of speaks to the necessity of the dialogue that we've been giving a bit of a timeline that makes it all make sense in this week as our work comes together with the dialogue in the wider community about collective impact strategies, Ready by 21 and the like. Second, I'll just say that we're very interested in this work at Deaconess Foundation because it's about the best for our children. It's about building the community's capacity to care for children and youth in a way that makes sense, investing in infrastructure so that we may care for them in positive ways in a strategic manner that reaches across sectors. And so we are pleased to be a part of this dialogue and this conversation. As we come to this today, I'm really excited to have been able to spend a little bit of time with our panelists and hear about their experience, and I would not rob you of that myself. So I'm going to do some brief introductions of our panelists and then pass off the mic to them that they may share with you from their experiences in various communities, and then come back just to facilitate a conversation with each of you. First up is Sue Gallagher. Dr. Gallagher is the Director of Research, Analysis, and Planning at the Children's Services Council of Broward County, Florida. The Children's Services Council was created by the voters in September 2000 to provide leadership, advocacy, and funding for services for and on behalf of children. The council also provides backbone support for the Broward Children's Strategic Plan, which is partnering with the Broward schools on the Black Male Success Task Force. Dr. Gallagher provides the council leadership for the plan, as well as overseeing the performance measures for the nearly 200 programs funded by the Children's Services Council. We welcome Dr. Gallagher to St. Louis. Speaking after Dr. Gallagher will be Dr. Gene Walker, who serves as United Way of Greater Atlanta's Vice President of Education in the Community Engagement Department. In June 2009, United Way of Greater Atlanta unveiled a new strategic plan aimed at addressing 4 broad social issues: education, income, health, and homelessness. Since July of 2010, Walker has led the Education Team Initiative to achieve a United Way of Greater Atlanta's education goal to ensure that children enter school ready to learn, graduate prepared for careers, and avoid risky behaviors. Dr. Walker's role includes collaborating with and investing in the Georgia After School Network and is a member of the Georgia's After School Team, a high-level strategy team that works to advance after-school efforts in Georgia. Recently, she was recognized as the 2013 Georgia After School Champion by the After School Alliance at their annual Breakfast of Champions event in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Dr. Walker. And finally, we're excited to introduce Jairus Cater. He is a student in public policy at the University of Tennessee. Cater found his calling serving those he saw experiencing unemployment, gangs, drug abuse, and incarceration in his community. Motivated by attending youth summer programs and community organizing events, his aim is to mobilize youth and help make life better for the disconnected and underprivileged. He is a strong advocate for social and economic mobility for all Americans. To work toward this goal, Cater served as co-chair of the Nashville Mayor's Child and Youth Master Plan Task Force, developing a living document that offers strategies to make Nashville the best city for its youth. Jairus also co-organized Nashville's Keeping Our Youth March to fight youth violence in the city. As a national youth ambassador for the White House Council for Community Solutions, Cater also helped incorporate youth voice into national collective impact efforts. He currently serves on the board of directors for the Forum for Youth Investment. We're absolutely pleased to welcome Jairus. And now we we'll have Dr. Gallagher to lead us in our first presentation. Each of our panelists will share about 10 minutes from their perspective, and then we'll come back to engage you in the conversation.
Okay, good afternoon. Glad to be here. Thank you to the Saigh Foundation and the Wyman folks for bringing us out to have some very rich conversation. Not only are we able to share with you our stories and struggles, but also to hear from you what's working in your community. My contribution to this conversation this afternoon is around data. And sometimes what happens when I say the word data is people's eyes start to glaze over and they kind of check out. And so we have this really robust tagline for my department, which is that research and data are the new sexy. Yes. So all you budding young researchers out there, feel that you will have an important contribution to make when you bring forth the data that we need to make the decisions about what's best for our children, our young people, and our families. In reflecting on what I would talk about this afternoon, not only are research and data sexy, but it's how data is used in our relationships. How do we create data? How do we use data? How do we share data? How do we make data an integral part of the work that we do together, and have that sort of be our feedback mechanism to say, is what we're doing working or not working? In my role at the Children's Services Council, as the moderator indicated, we fund around 200 programs, and for each one of those programs we collect data. So we know, are they working, are they not working? And we connect that data to what's happening in the community, and I'm going to explain how that happens to see if that helps the thinking that you're doing here in St. Louis. Just to put this work in a little bit of context, the Children's Services Council is an independent tax district that was created by the voters in 2000 to fund prevention and developmental services for families. And so what we're able to do is to put about $60 million of services on the street to help families from preconception through 22 to prevent things like juvenile delinquency, teen pregnancy, dropout, and we literally do the whole continuum of services, so that our mission and vision is to ensure that all children fulfill their potential and become a contributing member of society. And that whole vision is very important in the work that we do. How do we decide where those dollars go? How do we contribute to the community well-being, those collective impact conditions? We have a process here called the Broward Children's Strategic Plan. And what we've been able to do here in Broward County is to organize all of the child and youth and family advocates, people who are passionate about getting good results with our children and our families. We use results-based accountability. Mark Friedman's work, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough. And what that's allowed us to do is to identify 5 shared results in our community. So the top purple rectangles across the top include things like children live in stable and nurturing families. Does anybody disagree with that? Does anybody not want that to happen? Great. Check off box 1 of collective impact. We all agree on what the result will be. For each one of those results, we have community indicators. How well are we doing? What is the rate of abuse and neglect in Broward County? Are we really creating homes where children are safe and nurtured? The green row there is the convening of CEOs, funders, policymakers, community leaders who get together to say, how well are we doing on creating those community conditions of well-being, on achieving those results? And they meet on a quarterly basis to look at the data, to look at the strategies, to look at the resources, to look at the money. The folks in blue are the boots on the ground. These are the program managers, program directors who meet on a monthly basis to say, what are we doing to prevent abuse and neglect? What are we doing to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system? What are we doing to ensure early quality education? We've built a whole network of child-serving providers to be able to look at how are we creating these community conditions of well-being. What's also important is that this network of child and family serving organizations does not operate in a vacuum. But around the rim of this strategic plan is the community conditions, things like housing, the justice system, economic prosperity, all of those conditions which we know either contribute or inhibit children's positive youth development. And so we partner with those folks who have expertise in those areas to move that work forward. And let me just say, this was not a completely top-down approach. We didn't have leaders in Broward come together and say, magically, we're going to create this plan. What's happened in Broward is that people who were already passionate about these issues connected themselves and said, how do we do this work together? I'm already working in this arena in youth employment. You're working in juvenile delinquency. Where are those opportunities to work together? So we built this collective impact process from the ground up. Now, our leaders both gave us room to do that and have been pivotal in moving the work forward. And I can talk a little bit more about that in the future. But But this is our organizing mechanism that's data infused. Every one of those blue committees has a data sheet that says what's going on in that area, so that in a simple, accessible way, people can get that information. What's helped us get to this point? Some of the tools by the Forum for Youth Investments Ready by 21 Toolbox. If you go to their website, you'll see many of the documents and the tools that they have available. Two very important concepts have informed our thinking about how we create the data infrastructure necessary to know are we creating what works. First is that horizontal look across data. Are we able to access from the Department of Children and Families and Child Welfare data? Are we able to look at the Department of Juvenile Justice and the delinquency data? Are we able to look at the school district data and the educational data? And what is that telling us when we're able to look across those data systems to tell us how well are we doing? So that's the first piece, is we're kind of mapped out what data do we have available looking across systems. And then we began to look at vertically. So if we've got an individual in a program, what are their results? And then what does that look like in the neighborhood? And then what does that look like in the county? And being able to roll that individual data up to look at what's working and what's not working. And so part of this work of collective impact is creating those data infrastructures that allows us to give ourselves feedback. Is it working or is it not working? One other tool that was very helpful for us in our work is this community data inventory. And one of the things that I would suggest is that data work is not easy work, and that you might want to consider convening university partners, statisticians, folks who do this stuff for a living, bring their expertise to make sure that your data is robust, rigorous, valid, and reliable, but you need it to be able to have these community conversations. So we've gone through and we've looked at, do we have the demographic data? Do we have asset mapping data? What are the resources available in the community? What are the programs, the agencies, and the service system data look like? How is the program quality? You know, if we're funding a lot of programs, is there quality in those programs? Because that makes a difference for the outcomes. And then the workforce and the professional development of the staff working in the program. So how are we looking at all of those different data pieces? Now, it sounds overwhelming for people who sort of aren't working this process, but what I would suggest to you is that bring people to the table who already have an expertise in these things and figure out how you can work together, right? So you don't have to necessarily do all of this work, but find the people in your community who have that information, who have that knowledge, who can help you do that work. Because without the data, you really can't say, are we making progress? We can't say what's working, what's not working. And so it's critical to have those data partners at the table. In my shop at the Children's Services Council, I'm blessed to have a woman, Gloria Pudiak, who has developed an expertise in community indicators. And she is the go-to person in Broward County to get those child indicators. And that helps us with grants. It helps us with our budgeting process. So where in your community are those folks that have that expertise or that could develop that expertise and that repository of information? That's part of this collective impact work, is getting that data to a good place. And so how do we bring it all together at the Children's Services Council? This is a two-tiered view. Across the top, for every area that we fund, and we have about 14 funded areas, we take a look at the population accountability. What's the universe of need? This is an example of our delinquency diversion programs. We have over 5,500 young people in Broward County who got arrested last year for delinquency, and so that's our universe. Then we do some community indicator data, the number of juveniles that were referred, right? And you can see over the last 10 years, because of things like the Children's Strategic Plan and partnering, that rate of delinquency has gone down considerably and continues to go down because of our partnerships. And then the last one is a service system outcome of all of the diversion program providers, which is a program that kids can go in if they get a misdemeanor and then it won't go on their record because they completed all these requirements, the percent that recidivate. And you can see it's as low as 3%. Across the bottom is where the CSC investment in this area is then aggregated and reported. So how much did we do? How much money did we spend? How many kids did we serve? How well did we do it? Which is the program quality, our monitoring results, our fiscal utilization, and then here in the lower right-hand corner are the program performance results. What are the percent of kids who were served, those 1,400 kids that didn't recidivate, that completed their education? And then on one page, as a community, we're able to tell the story of what's happening with juvenile delinquency in our story. This is how collective impact, using data in an effective manner, can communicate that story and invite partners. Now, I've done an amazingly quick job in less than 10 minutes almost, because he's going to give me the hook. But I think it gives you a sense of not only what data do you need, how, across horizontal and vertical, but then how do you communicate it to people? And so we share this with our council members and with our community, that they can say, you know what, I want to be a part of this. or this makes sense to me and maybe we need more money. If we've got 5,500 kids who are getting in trouble, we're only funding 1,400, can we get more money to bring it up to 3,000 and really turn that curve on creating the delinquency referrals to go down? So that's how data works. Okay, great. There you go.
Wow. Good afternoon. I bring you greetings from the United Way of Greater Atlanta on behalf of our CEO, Milton Little Jr. And first of all, I want to congratulate the leaders in St. Louis for embracing this collective impact model to increase the outcomes that we all want for children and youth. So if your arm was long enough, I would say pat yourselves on the back or each other on the back for being bold and courageous to embrace this collective impact model and using, in my opinion, one of the best resources and tools and support for collective impact, and that is the Forum for Youth Investment, Ready by 21. As Starsky mentioned, in 2009, United Way decided if we are really serious about changing the outcomes that we want for children and youth, then we are definitely going to have to act and think differently and change the way that we do business. And how were we going to do that, particularly in the area of increasing the outcomes that we wanted for children and youth? So in order to achieve our goal, children enter school ready to learn, avoid risky behaviors, and graduate prepared for careers, we were going to have to embrace a cradle-to-career infrastructure or model to get this work done. So a bold action for United Way was to change the infrastructure. We had for over 14 years a strong birth to 5 program. Great. We also had the typical United Way youth serving organizations that we funded. And then, of course, the risky behavior piece, none of which ever talked to each other. So the bold action was to create an infrastructure that modeled cradle to career. So that meant that we would have to break down silos and create a birth to 21 or cradle to career infrastructure. That's a bold action because that's thinking and acting differently. Well, we've always had 3 separate. We never talk. We had to really walk the talk. If we were going to ask external partners to think and act differently, we would have to model that internally. And I use the phrase, instead of walk the talk, hips and lips in sync. And so before that we could say externally, this is what you need to do, we had to show that we were serious about it internally. So that started a conversation and work to bring all of that heavy lifting that had been done for 14 years in early learning and combine it and move it all the way down into elementary, middle, and high school and post-secondary if we were going to achieve our goals. So using the tools and support of Ready by 21, an audit was done with the leaders and business and community leaders in Atlanta to assess our readiness. Were you really ready to think and act differently as leaders? And so the audit showed us where there were strengths and where there were opportunities for us to work differently if we were going to really be serious about changing the outcomes for children and youth. So the audit has given us our framework, if you will, of what it is as leaders that we needed to do in the metropolitan Atlanta area and to improve and to get the outcomes that we wanted for children and youth. So this framework, and you may have seen the gears, we had to gear up, if you will, in order to create this framework. So that first gear, we spent at least 1.5 years really thinking about, as leaders, what were we going to be held accountable for, and were we really going to think and act differently? So that meant that we would have to make broader partnerships. Really? Instead of playing with our usual suspects? We had to think outside of the box and who needs to be at the table, who really has a vested interest, and then break our silos and share data, share work, Okay, now here's the tricky one. Share funding. Because we can get real particular and protective when it comes to sharing strategies to get funding. And so we decided that we really were serious as leaders and going to think and act differently, to partner differently. And after a while, it became fun for our leadership council to say, I've got a new partner. And for United Way, an example is partnering with the Georgia Department of Education. Had never had a partnership with them, but we wanted certainly the same outcomes for the children and youth in the metropolitan Atlanta area. Why would we not partner? We couldn't find an answer. So we partnered with them. And other partners that we usually did not partner with, and our leadership council members started doing the same, and we became a rich leadership council. A Ready by 21 collaborative network with an overarching leadership council, partnership clusters, as well as support from the United Way staff, and then a funders cluster. So as I talk about the leaders gear, I will tell you now, since this graphic is up, the second gear, oftentimes in collective impact work, particularly around children and youth, folks like to skip over and just try to work on the outcomes. Can you imagine why? Working with families and communities and the school, that partnership can be messy and it's hard. And a lot of times you will hear organizations talk about family involvement and community involvement. We raise the bar to family engagement and community engagement. And as I like to say, using my daughter as an example I was sharing earlier, I would rather her tell me, Mommy, I'm engaged to someone rather than I'm involved with someone. The level of commitment is a little different when you use the term engagement. And so we challenge our leaders to really engage families, engage the community, and engage the school in this work. Because, as we learned from the Forum for Youth Investment, children don't grow up in programs. They grow up in families and communities. And we had to get that second gear engaged if we were really going to bring about the changes and outcomes that we wanted for children and youth. And of course, the outcomes for children and youth, our graduation rate in the metro Atlanta area is about 61.2%. We can, we must do better, and it begins with that first gear of leaders thinking and acting differently. So the Leadership Council, and when we first started this conversation in 2009, 2010, looked like this. State leaders and some coalitions involved in continuing the conversation of what is the common agenda, what do we really want to achieve across this cradle to career pipeline of services and support. So we identified 5 areas if we were going to be successful in cradle to career: school readiness, birth to 5, early grade literacy, that by the time children leave 3rd grade, they had to read on 3rd grade because they would have learned to read, or as they enter to 4th grade and beyond, read to learn. And that they did not do that. We knew that that was going to be a problem. Smooth middle school transition in and out, and that's another area that folks try to skip around because middle school can be a little challenging at best, but you can't forget the middle. On-time graduation was another key piece, and then completion of post-secondary, because we found that our young people were dropping out of post-secondary as quickly as they were from high school, so it had to be addressed if children were going to be ready for careers. So we moved from this 2009-10 to this is how we look now, where we are organized, we are aligned, there are no random acts of improvement. It's aligned, it's intentional partnerships where we can work from the state, the regional, down to, as you see on one corner, promised neighborhood level. And so as I listen to Sue, our next big step is to get the data involved, and we're still challenged with working with and sharing data. for various reasons, but that is something that as leaders we're holding ourselves accountable for to get done. So as I close my part of the presentation, I leave you with this thought. The collective impact is a framework. It's a process, not a product or a program. And this process takes time. So that burning patience, even though there's a sense of urgency to get our young people ready to succeed in school, work, and life, the process takes time. And with our business leaders, oftentimes they, are you there yet? You're there yet? Are you there yet? What's your result? And so I would leave to you, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, and we're at the point now where we can really accelerate because we've built the strong infrastructure to support a cradle-to-career framework. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm really excited to be here. And first, I would like to say thank you to Saigh and for Nine Network for inviting us here to speak with you all today. A little bit about me. I was fortunate enough to have a good education. I went to good public schools in Nashville, Tennessee, graduated from a magnet school. But a lot of young people in our city didn't have the opportunities that I've had. So I wanted to dedicate my life to helping others. When I was younger, my parents always told me, give back to your community, because that's a very important part. When you're given something, you have an opportunity, share that with someone else, share the wealth. And so in 2009, the mayor of Nashville asked me to co-chair the Mayor's Child and Youth Task Force. This is one of our collective impact initiatives, and we were all new to this type of concept. And so on the outset, we want to make sure that young people were engaged and not just involved. We want to make sure they were engaged in the process and every step of the process. And that was very important to us because when we think about collective impact, when we think about how things have always been done in the youth development space or collective impact initiatives, young people are viewed as recipients and not co-change makers. And so we want to make sure that we identify young people as co-change makers and decision makers in the process, because it's very important. And so we want to make sure that we took some steps and principles to make sure that young people were engaged. And not just engaged, but want to meaningfully engage them in the process. From me serving as co-chair to young people serving on the different subcommittees. We had 4 different subcommittees that we want to make sure that hit a young person's life: transportation, health and safety, education, and I can't even remember the 4th one. It's been so long ago, but we want to make sure that young people were involved throughout the process. And it's not an easy process involving young people in collective impact work, because what you see is young people at the table with adults. That it's a disconnect, because what you see is language. Young adults can talk in a different type of language than young people are used to. And so we want to make sure that young people's voices were being heard, and that we could eliminate the language barriers so that young people could voice their opinions. And what we saw was, it was very interesting work in the collective impact initiative that we had, that young people, when we first started, we had no clue how this was going to work. We were all going in blindsided. And so when we first started this work, we wanted to make sure that every young person, we could connect every young person, not just young people who were already involved in programs and already willing to voice their opinions, but introvert young people or low-income young people, and not only low-income young people, but young people from private schools and from different type of backgrounds and different types of parts of our city. And we want to make sure that every young person's voice was being heard throughout this process. And it was a phenomenal process to understand that. First, the question we had was, how are we going to get young people involved? And how are we going to meaningfully engage them where their voices were being heard? And so what we did was we took a step back before we started this process, and we said, well, we want to meet young people where they are. And we wanted to see what they really felt was that they needed in their community, and not just adults putting their own ideas onto young people. And it was very important and we want to make sure that every task force member, we have 50 different task force members, and we always wanted to make sure that our eye was on our goal, on our outcome, and that was a young person's life. And this was to impact every part of the young person's life, and not only adults impacting the life, but community members and leaders from different cross sectors. And we want to make sure that we could bring all people together, including young people, so that we can create meaningful change. And so when you think about that, what does that look like? And how does it work? We figured out that we could not have meetings in the morning time because young people were in school. So we had to make sure that we had meetings in the afternoons so that young people could come and participate. And then another thing that we found out, that we didn't even have a clue that transportation was a big issue. Young people couldn't get from school to the meetings in the afternoon because they had lack of transportation. And these things we probably wouldn't have seen if it wasn't for our collective impact work. And so that actually shows you how powerful the work really is when we can put young people and adults at the table co-creating change together. So we went through many different processes trying to collect data from young people and actually understand what they wanted and not what we were going to force onto them. We hosted youth summits, community conversations, and as a co-chair, I went to the different public schools and private schools so that I could understand and have a dialogue conversation, a youth dialogue conversation, so that young people could tell me what they really wanted. And we identified a lot of different things that young people wanted in the community that we probably wouldn't have seen. You usually think of the simple things like teen pregnancy and alcohol abuse and that, but one thing that we didn't realize that was very important to young people in Nashville was transportation. Young people really wanted transportation because it was really, it was stopping them from opportunities in our city, internship opportunities and volunteer opportunities because of the lack of transportation. And when we went through this data process and trying to collect data so that we can identify what we wanted to do, what type of strategies we wanted to implement into our plan, we wanted to make sure that young people's voices were heard on all types of levels. Not just young people who were in private schools or very fortunate, but also young people who were really good at art. Because you never know what young people have to say through their talents. And we implemented a lot of the art pieces that young people created into our plan. And we wanted to make sure on the outset that we were creating a plan that young people could own, so they can be a part of this change and they can go to their community or their friends and say, hey, I was involved in this change process. I want you to be involved as well. And what we saw was youth were being developed and mobilized throughout this process that if it wasn't for the collective impact work, we probably would have never seen. I mean, young people were so enthused to come to the meetings and so eager to share their voices in different types of capacities. And we wanted to make sure that we emphasize the youth piece because it's very important. Because we've never seen this happen before. Young people at the table with adults creating change. That's something that really hadn't been heard of before. And sometimes the adults may look on the young people and say, well, why are they here? You know, and say, well, what can they contribute to the conversation? That was what they said at the beginning, but at the end of our 6 months process of creating a master plan, they were eager to get more young people involved and listen and say, young people are an asset to our work. They're the key and the reason why we're here. So why don't we use them? They're the biggest asset that we probably never would have seen if we never stepped outside of the box and thought, well, what's going on? And we want to make sure that we can emphasize that. And this is actually a picture of young people entering data from our surveys that we sent to, we sent a survey out to young people all across our city to understand what they wanted. And young people who are part of our subcommittees and young people who were in the community that, that this place was housed came. We had a pizza party and we entered data all night. It was a lot of interest. And they really enjoyed that. And it was adults there, and we were all just together creating change and really built the momentum of the plan and really made young people and adults really eager to say, hey, this is what works. And we need to continue this work because it's right here in practice that young people want to be involved. They want their voices to be heard. Why haven't we been doing this all along? And that was one of the biggest things that we found out during our process. But some of the barriers to involving young people were, like I said, transportation issues were very important to young people to get to and from the meetings. And then the language barriers that we had, where we have high-level thinkers in the room and then young people. So we had to make sure that we could leave, we can make sure that young people were welcomed into the conversation. And this is what we created, 14 for Our Future. Young people own this piece of, this recommendation to our mayor, and the community own it, and this is what we created. And it's an ongoing process. And so, so one takeaway that I want you to take away today is young people are an asset to our work. Thank you.
I want to thank our panelists for sharing with us, and particularly, I think you felt the energy that Jairus had there. I hope you picked up that energy. We invite, of course, you into this conversation at this time. We remind you that if you have questions and you have a smartphone near you and technologically savvy, then if you use the hashtag AmGradSTL, AmGradSTL, Emily there from the Wyman team is prepared to share your question. If you don't want to stand out, one of the things that Jairus was telling me at lunch is that one of the things that the young people would do is they didn't always feel comfortable standing up in front of people. If that's you, just tweet your question, and we'll be glad to share it. We also have a couple of mic runners on the aisle, so if you have a question that you want to share, just raise your hand. I will let you know that with the young people that we have here from Cultural Leadership and Wyman, in a few moments we're going to break out from you more seasoned people in the conversation and create space for them to ask their questions very directly. So, so if you are one of those seasoned people, jump in now with your question. I have one right up front, Maxine.
Hi, I'm Jerry, and thank you for that great presentation. I saw the report.
Maxine, if you would hold just for the mic, because we are live streaming, we want to make sure we get you on the mic.
Hi, welcome to St. Louis, and thank you for that great presentation. I noticed the report says July 2010, and I'm one of those business people that wants results yesterday, but I'm really concerned that, you know, children can't wait. I mean, they're in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, high school. They're, you know, sitting around waiting for us. What is the biggest difference since July 2010 for the work that you all did that was generated by the conversation that the children started?
Mm-hmm. As one of the co-chairs, when I went to the different schools, I wanted to make sure that young people identified what they really wanted. And one thing that we've implemented since the plan was presented to the mayor was transportation. Like I said, that was one of the biggest things. And now since that we identified that young people had a disconnect between opportunities, programs, and after school time, the CEO of our local transportation agency implemented free bus passes for young people so that they can get to and from different opportunities like volunteer opportunities and internships.
So is attendance at those things up, or they're getting more jobs because they now have the transportation? Are there the results there to back up if that was the free passes made a difference?
I mean, this is an ongoing process, so it really doesn't stop when the plan is created. So we're still implementing our strategies that we put into the plan.
Other questions? We invite you, of course, to stand up as well as you ask your questions. Francella has a question right in the front row.
Hi, I'm Francella Jackson from the city of East St. Louis, and I'm here with Bill Creve, and we're a part of an initiative on the East Side, and we're just beginning the collective impact conversation. What advice would you give us starting out?
I would encourage you to be clear about what it is that you want to achieve. And then I would also encourage you, that last phrase, to, even though there's a sense of urgency, and I'm a lifelong educator, so there's that burning urgency, but there's also the burning patience to get the strong infrastructure first. There have been collective impact models where they want to hurry up, and then the infrastructure isn't strong to allow effective implementation. It falls apart. So I would say make sure that you build your strong infrastructure.
And one of the ways that you can do that is to map who's at the table, what resources do you have, and how can they partner to contribute to the results that you want. You know, a lot of this process is very visual and graphics and pictures so that people can see themselves in it. And so if you were to take a map of the partners that you have in East St. Louis, what would that look like, and who's missing? Who are your active people, and then who are your potential folks that you need to go out and build those relationships with? And then what data do you have available to speak to the issues that you want? Do you have the delinquency data? Do you have the education data? Do you have the housing data? And then what does that story begin to tell you, and how might that attract other partners? And then also, the process we use in Broward is very much research and evidence-based. You know, there's a lot of good work out there with the Wyman work, and what programs are actually working, and how do we bring those programs into our communities? And then the third piece is, how do we engage parents and families? And what are our strategies around that?
A good tool that the forum uses with Ready by 21 is the stakeholders wheel, so that you can see who's at the table, who needs to be at the table. So again, the forum has great tools and resources to help you form your collaborative or your infrastructure.
I would say when times get hard, make sure that you keep your outcome in mind, because it's not an easy process. Just make sure that you keep your eye on the goal.
Thank you for that. We've got one question on Twitter that Emily's going to share with us.
Yes, and oh gosh, I didn't expect that. Sorry, the question was for Dr. Walker, and what was the agency response to change to the collective impact model?
Great question. We ask our agencies, when we created our Cradle to Career pipeline, and it took a while, but we went to every agency and asked them where do their work align along that continuum. And they could put their finger on it. Well, we're in the middle school space, or Big Brothers, Big Sisters, so leadership and service learning in middle and high school. And unfortunately, there were some agencies whose work that we were funding no longer aligned, and so they fell out of our investment. But I will tell you, when you are overseeing a $14 million education portfolio, you want your work to align across the pipeline, so that when your donors are saying what's the return on investment, that you're able to measure. But what those partners were also able to do, the agencies, they sat with us and helped us to identify the targets, the outcomes, and the indicators that we were going to hold them accountable for funding. And so when it was time to fund, they knew what they were going to be held accountable for, because they helped us to identify those strategies and indicators and measures. So it's been a great process, even for them, as our partnership cluster members.
Just so we don't scare any of our other United Way folks, and when you say those agencies, you're speaking to the three that fell within the panels related to children and youth broadly, that really kind of identify where they fit.
Right.
Not every agency.
Right. Those would be our agencies that were in the education portfolio. As you mentioned earlier, there's health and income and homelessness in Atlanta, in the greater Atlanta purview. So these were just education agencies and partners.
Good deal. Good deal. I saw some other hands. Yes.
Hi, I'm Allison Heil with the Teen Pregnancy and Prevention Partnership here in Missouri. And thank you all for this wonderful symposium. I'm noticing that adolescent sexual health was a piece of all of the different puzzles that we've seen addressed. And I'm wondering if one of the strategies used was medically accurate sexual health education, which we call MASHE, medically accurate sexual health education. Was that one of the strategies used, and what other strategies were used?
I can speak to, in Atlanta, our risky behaviors included teen pregnancy prevention and STDs, and one of our partners that you may have noticed on the grid was GCAP. And from GCAP, we were even able to form a P3 partnership for funding around teen pregnancy prevention. So my answer to you would be yes. And then also as a partnership cluster, we've invited the other youth-serving agencies around risky behaviors to come to the table to look at how teen pregnancy can align with juvenile justice or dropout or whatever. So it's not just a standalone, it's how the one affects the other as well.
In Broward County, I can't speak to the specific implementation of that program. What I do know is that our Department of Health Youth Focus Arena, the strategies that they're implementing are then shared across the committees, like the Delinquency Prevention Committee, the Positive Youth Development Committee. So one of the things that we do is we set up, when we have a best practice, is we try to share that as effectively and efficiently as we can, because that's the community expertise that we need across all of those silos. And that's how we integrate things. Good question.
Great, thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Andrea Bell Darris, and I'm with Walgreens Expressions. And basically, we go around the high schools and get teenagers excited about making healthy choices like teen pregnancy prevention, stop bullying, suicide prevention, and other issues of that nature. My question is, when you are doing a project that's time sensitive, what are some great ways to get partners involved and get more community advocates involved when it's time sensitive?
When we created our master planning process, we wanted to, because we only had 6 months to create a plan, we wanted to make sure that we incorporated community voices. And what we did was we had community conversations, 10 across our city, where people were invited to come. Anyone was welcomed. Community members were welcome to come, and that's what we created, continued the conversation of what we were doing and the change that we were creating.
I would say at United Way, those of you who know United Way, 3 things: to give, advocate, and volunteer. So when we have a partner that has a time-sensitive event, we will engage our volunteers, and with our leadership council and network, we will send it to them as well, so that everyone has an opportunity to either volunteer or at least to get it out on their network so that the event is well attended and supported.
In the Broward Children's Strategic Plan, in the last 3 months, we've convened all of the community outreach and community liaison people from about 200 nonprofits into a committee to say, how can we maximize public awareness campaigns, community fairs, and linking parents to services. So we're building that network proactively and then connecting all of the service providers need to tell people this is what's going on or this is what's happening to that existing network of community outreach folks. And so it's connecting networks to get the word out.
I want to go to some of our young people's questions. We got a question from Romanita Hemphill. Where's Romanita? Right up front. The mic's coming to you, Romanita.
My name is Romanita. My question was, what did you see in your community that made this work?
So your question is, what did we see in the community to make this work?
To make you want to do this work.
Oh, you all, young people. You all. You know, there's a song, and I won't sing it, I'll just say the words. I'll spare you. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. You are our responsibility. And as leaders and as an adult, and I will just speak as an educator, in Georgia, if we want the workforce that we talk about that we need, then it's up to us to make sure that our children have the education and skills that they need to fill those jobs. And so it's a sense of public will and knowing that you indeed are our future, and making sure that we walk the talk rather than just say it and point our finger at you when you make poor choices, but how do we support you to be ready by 21 to succeed in college or in work in life.
And I'll just piggyback on that. In a very practical way, there's not enough money in the world to solve all the problems with money. And so to the young woman's point about partnership, that we realize that as much money as we have or as much money as the school district have, it's not enough money. What has to happen is when we bring our money, our resources, our thoughts, our youth, our strategies together, then we can create the change. And only when we partner together can we create those community conditions of well-being. And that's what's brought us to the table. We can't do it alone.
And as leaders, as young people, we're tomorrow's leaders. And so it's very important for us to be involved today so that we can shape our future tomorrow.
Yeah. The gentleman right here had a question.
Hi, I'm Evan Lehman. In cultural leadership, we went on a school swap, and I went to a school in the SLPS system, and I go to a public school. Oh, you aren't from St. Louis. St. Louis.
Thank you for translating that.
St. Louis Public Schools. And comparatively, they, I guess, statistically don't perform as well as my school, whether graduation rates or whatever, as my school in West County, which is suburban to the west of St. Louis. So my question for you is, how are you all involving the youth that are affected by this educational gap? And how do you say I and my fellow peers should attack this issue if we're so embedded in it already?
I mean, especially when we're dealing with all different types of young people who come from different types of backgrounds, it's really important that we meet them where they are and not expect for them to be somewhere where they are. And that was important. We had to go to them and actually have a conversation, a physical conversation, to say, what do you want? Because, I mean, when I went to some of the high schools in Nashville, some of the low-performing schools, and I asked them, I said, you know, what do you want to see in the plan? And they said, well, you know, does it really matter? Because our voices aren't going to be heard. And I stopped them right there and I said, no, they are. That's why I'm here, so I can make sure that your voices are being heard. And they're like, wow. So then when they saw the plan and actually saw the things that we implemented, the strategies that we implemented into the plan that were the things that they were talking about, it mobilized them. And they were really excited to be involved in more work.
Go ahead, Jean.
I was just going to say, you keep hearing this cradle to career language, and we know that if children are going to be prepared, that we have to start early at birth. And so a part of our cradle to career approach in Atlanta has been to identify the 3 persistently low performing high schools in their community and to incubate, if you will, a cradle to career model to see if families and children have the supports and services that they need all the way through. We believe that they will be prepared for career. Also, another tool from in partnership from Ready by 21 has been the Gallup organization, who has a Gallup student survey that measures a student's sense of hope, well-being, and engagement. And what our vision is that if this is done across our 17 school districts in the metropolitan Atlanta, we can look to see where there's high sense of hope, well-being, and engagement versus a low sense, and what is going on in those communities in school where there's high hope and well-being and compared to low, and then maybe implement some of those things in those other schools so that it kind of equals or levels the playing field for all children.
And also to speak to your point, I think it's important that there's a structure to having the youth voice. So whether it's an advisory board, whether it's a youth leader at the table for the meetings at a time that the youth can actually attend. I mean, it's not just a one-time go ask the students and then you're done, but it's that ongoing commitment and participation in the process that's important in setting up this collective impact and ensuring the youth voice. So,
and I would also like to add is that you have to have different types of ways of connecting with young people because they're all different. And so we want to make sure that we identify them, like Sue said, on building infrastructure so that every young person could be heard. And we did that through summits, community conversations, surveys, so different types of ways that we connect with a diverse group of young people.
Good deal. I had a question from Eli Williams. I want to let Eli ask his question. Where's Eli? Eli's way in the back.
Hello, I'm Elijah Williams. I'm a sophomore at Hazelwood East High School. And my question is, what are some effective partnerships that you have seen?
Question about effective partnerships that you've seen in your communities.
I would say one of the effective partnerships is with our school district and our service providers. There's often a disconnect between the two, and they're serving the same children. I call one of the first shift, and sometimes the service provider is the second shift adult, and there's a disconnect, and then the children tend to drop between the two. So the most effective partnerships that I've seen is when the school and the service providers are in a partnership and are working closely together, and a smooth trade-off, or if you will, transition between the students who are from school to an after-school program.
I'd like to give an example of a recent partnership that's been doing some tremendous work in reducing the rates of delinquency. So we've got police departments at the table, the school districts at the table, the juvenile judges are at the table, and then service providers are at the table. And what that group of partners has been able to do is to build a civil citation process in Broward County, where if a kid does something that's not a serious or violent offense, it's just sort of a teenage poor judgment piece, that they don't get charged with a crime that stays on their record and impacts education and employment, but they get a civil citation. And then they go through an education process about, well, what does that mean? And maybe some restorative justice where they have to face the victim of the crime that they perpetuated. And so it becomes more of an educational or rehabilitative piece. And that's part of the decline that we've seen in the number of referrals, is that those sectors, not easy to bring together, police folks, school folks, judge folks, and social service folks, to say we are committed to teaching our kids right from wrong in this fashion and not slapping an arrest record on them. And that's been a very effective partnership.
In Nashville, a lot of our nonprofits work in silos, and I know we see that across in different cities. But in Nashville, they identified that we all have the same goal in mind, to help young people. And they created a youth opportunity center where different nonprofits have come together under one roof to create a home base for young people, a place where they own, they're welcomed, they can come at any time, they have a kitchen there, they have a place where they can, college access center. It's just a wide range of services that are all housed in the same place, where a young person, wherever they come from, can go to this one place and get a wide variety of services.
That's great. I have another young person with a question in the back.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Hayes. I'm a senior at Cardin Ritter. And I was wondering, in your opinion, how important do you believe it is for us as the youth to uplift and support each other?
Very important. I mean,
critical.
It's important that we help each other, because, I mean, we're in this together. And the collective impact work really shows that we're a team. And we have to help each other, because we won't get anywhere if we don't help everyone get to where they need to be. And so we have to make sure that we can connect with people who we've never connected with, a diverse group of people, and venture into waters that we've never been before. And it makes you feel uncomfortable. And it's very important that we all stick together in our processes, because at the end of the day, Nashville, St. Louis, Atlanta, we're a city, and we all have to live together. We have to breathe the same air. And so it's very important that we come together and create change together for our city.
Gabrielle, I agree with Jarius. You're absolutely there. I don't think there are any silver bullets, but there are silver linings. And I think when your voice is heard and you come to the table, you are our silver lining. So your voice is critical, that you all uniting together for a common voice and a chorus of yes, we can and we care and we want to be a part of the solution sends a different message than what we see about youth on television, if you will. So your voice is critical. You're our silver lining.
So, question up front, as we make our way up there, wanted to note it may be hard to see and even to think about when you hear Jairus now as a senior in college, but he was a senior in high school when he led this process. And so you hear from him not only the hope, but also the integral details of understanding the process, which may be surprising as we think about how this plays out for young people in our communities, but still a community champion, still speaking the language in a way that illustrates the real capacity of youth leadership in this effort. So we appreciate hearing these voices. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Brianna Warren, and I'm a senior at Kirkwood High School, and I'm also in cultural leadership. And in preparation for college and next fall, I want to know, is there any participation or programs for the college students in the area to come out and help you all or be mentors to the young adults in the programs?
It may be helpful to talk about ways that young people are engaged in different aspects of programs, either the ones that were implemented through the strategies or in the process that could prepare them. We were joking with Jairus that he didn't get any college credit for this work, but we figured it at least look good on a resume, you know. So if there are ways that young people are involved either in programs or process.
In Broward County, our Broward College has a service learning program that partners with those committees that you saw in blue. So one of the things that they did is that the young folks in college created we had a prosperity toolkit that educates families about financial literacy and how to spend your money, how to save your money, how to budget, all those kinds of things. And what they helped us with is to put it on the web, put it on one of those little flash drives, make it electronic, and helped us update it. So we need your help across all of those committees. And one of the things that we're doing now at the college is sharing with the faculty, here are the opportunities in the community for you and your students to partner with us as community agencies and entities to move this work forward. So you need the experience in the real world, and we need your experience in getting the work done. So those are some of the opportunities that we see.
We have a program called Near Peer, and it's college students who will mentor either high school or middle school students. And I will tell you, when you say something to a middle school student or a high school student, your voice makes more sense. If we both said the same thing, they would hear you in a very different way than they would hear me. So mentoring young people, because oftentimes they don't have role models in their communities who have completed high school or college, or they figure they can't. But when you share that with them your story of yes, you can, I did, you can, I'll help you fill out FAFSA or interview or what have you, it has such a larger impact.
And in Nashville, we have housing the Youth Opportunity Center's College Access Center. Young people can go get ACT prep, help them apply for colleges, and it's a great place because it's just where young people kind of sit around and talk about topics that are very important to us, especially going into moving from transition from secondary to post-secondary. So the College Access Center is very helpful for young people making that transition because it's very hard, especially because right now we have 6.7 million disconnected young people in the United States. They're not in work or school, and that transition is very important, and that's where we need to bridge that gap that we have.
We have now reached what we call the lightning round. And I've gotten a bit of a high sign on time, so I'm going to try to move quickly. I know I've got one from Emily on Twitter, one up front. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll try to get a mic close to you.
Was it difficult to recruit university partners to assist in collecting and analyzing data for this initiative?
Yes. So part of the challenge is that, universities have a different audience for their work, which is other university faculty. And so they have this way of talking and doing things that aren't necessarily needed for community work. In other words, there's sort of a criteria of good enough that the boots on the ground, the community agencies really need to be able to move the work forward, to get some feedback, is it working? And so part of the work with universities is being able to translate their expectations and the community's needs to a place where we can engage each other. And it's an ongoing process. We find that the universities are open, but they're very difficult silos to integrate. But we keep at it, and that we've had some successes with that, especially around our substance abuse. We have a guy at one of our local universities who does tremendous substance abuse data, integrating it with the criminal justice database, and provides some really powerful GIS maps about what's happening in that arena.
Great. We have one question in the front, and then we'll go to the back here.
And my name is Bill Krieb, and my concern is, we value both large agencies and small agencies, but a lot of our smaller agencies, don't have the capacity to do the data collection, and if that's such an important part of collective impact, how did you look at that when you were building your infrastructure?
We, the Children's Services Council of Broward has a commitment to capacity building, which we provide through training, technical assistance, and then just ongoing capacity building meetings. And it's a process. And what we recognize is that the smaller nonprofits are in different developmental stages, and we try to help them take the next step. And so not every next step is a data collection step, but maybe it's building some of those pieces in their agency that will help get them ready for data collection, maybe educating their staff about the need for pre and post testing and that kind of thing. So, as Jean referenced, this is a process, and a big part of it is mapping out where are we in the process and how do we bring people along. Because at the end of the day, we do need the data from the small niche nonprofit agencies who are serving folks that the big folks don't get to. But we need them to be able to create those community conditions. And so a part of our strategy is to be able to provide resources to those small nonprofits to get them to the place where their data, their strategies, their approaches, their successes can contribute to that collective impact. It's part of the work. Good question. Thanks.
Good deal. Question there in the back.
Hi, I'm a junior at Cardinal College Prep. My name is Quentin Phillips. My question is, what unique techniques can young leaders such as I promote and instill in the minds of other teens to become more engaged in the community? And how are major corporations like United Way can be partners with us teens to promote this awareness?
You want to take that? Oh, I can take that. Okay.
He called you out.
Well, he did. He did. And that's fine. I would say, as a United Way, we fund youth-serving organizations. So what we do is challenge our youth-serving organizations and ask them, what is your youth-driven space? Is your program designed by you, or is it designed by youth with youth voice in mind? The reason being, in the youth-serving organizations that have elementary students, most students will go because mommy or dad said, I have to go. But in middle school and high school, youth can vote with their feet. I'm not going. So if we're going to engage our youth, and oftentimes people say, what's the secret sauce? The secret sauce, to me, of youth engagement in programs is to have the youth voice at the table at the beginning when the program is designed, rather than to design it and pray and hope that they will come. But if you design it with them at the table, they will come because it is theirs, and then they will encourage other youth to be involved in the program as well, because it's about them, for them, created by them.
We had a program in Nashville called Youth United, and it was a youth-led program. Young people were involved, and they actually led the program. And we had a one staff person that kind of facilitated throughout the process. But when young people create something, they feel a sense of ownership to it. And that was very important. And you saw young people share it with other young people, say, hey, I'm a part of this youth-led organization, come and be a part of it too. And it was just like a domino effect, and more young people wanted to be involved because it was something that they created and not something that was created for them.
And I know you didn't ask this question, but I'd like to pose this to the people who fund the nonprofits who serve children, and that is through your contracting and RFP process, you have the ability to articulate what service providers need to do. And one of those things is to have a youth advisory board or to have a youth voice component to the service that they're delivering. So you can strategically use your dollars to create opportunities for youth to participate, and also parents. You know, so in many of our contracts, particularly our high school after school contracts, is we have an advisory board that youth have to participate on. We have youth, parent engagement pieces, and we get lots of pushback from the providers. It's hard work. But until we as funders recognize that this is an important part of this process and required in our contracts, we won't learn the lessons that we need to build that engagement with the youth and the parents.
And I will tell you, for United Way, we've been working with, partnered with the Weichert Center that has taught us how to hold other service providers, youth service providers, accountable for including youth voice in their program. And then when you do hold the purse strings, you can hold service providers accountable as well. So you're exactly right.
For this portion, not for the entire conversation, but for this portion of our conversation about collective impact and youth in this community, this will be the last question. And then we'll transition. The gentleman in the center.
Hello, my name is Brad Taylor. I'm a parent of a Wyman teen. And I just want to say the gifts that have occurred in the attitude and the things in my child are very greatly received by all the people around her. The question I have that I didn't hear today was, what about the single parent or the no parent family? How do we get to that part? Because I feel that that's really the part where the schooling and the children fall through the gap, is because there is no leadership, or they are not aware of any leadership other than a teacher, and there's no longer any discipline in school or anywhere else, and they don't receive that anywhere. And I don't know, I haven't heard anything about any of those things. That's all I have.
I have two thoughts on that. One is that, you know, we're a local government. We're funded by property tax. But we view our role as partnering with parents and other community entities to help move our children along to successful adulthood and community engagement. So there'll be times when we may need to step in and offer that support. There'll be times when the parents are doing that, or when the community or the school. And so part of the thinking is, how are we acting together to ensure that those children have what they need, whatever their circumstances are. And so that's a mindset that we want to be self-reflective about, is how are we doing that in our community. And then the second thought is that in Broward County, the law in Florida has been, I think it's changed a little bit this year, but that when kids age out of foster care, so these are kids who don't have parents at home, the state funding really stops. And so what our partners did about 10 years ago is the funders got together and said, how do we begin to wrap support services around these kids when they turn 18? And today, 10 years later, we have a model of how to support youth who are aging out of foster care with life coaches, housing assistance, education assistance, healthcare assistance. Because as a community, we saw that those kids who didn't have parents needed additional supports. And so that's how we began to think about that.
Well, the other thing is, how can we reach the parent that has no hope? The parent that has felt that they have lost control or never had any control. You know,
Brad, I will say to you, one of our key strategies at United Way is parent and family engagement. It matches that middle gear that I mentioned before, family, and it doesn't matter what the family looks like. The family could be a single parent, it could be grandmother, it could be a dad. one of the things that we have done is to provide parents with leadership training. It's called a Parent Leadership Institute. And in my 38 years of being an educator, I have yet to run across a parent who doesn't care about their child or who wants better for their child than what they have. But what I found, what was lacking, is tell me how, and I will do it, because I want my child to be successful. I want to have my child to have more than what I did. So we've been giving them the skills that they need to not only be a leader in their home, but how to lead in the school and then in the broader community. And we've found great success with that, Brad.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We absolutely thank our panelists for their insights and perspectives. And we're pleased, and we definitely want to thank our young people for stepping up and standing out and leading us in our discussion. As we transition this conversation again, there are institutions and organizations in this community that have been engaged in this dialogue for years, and we are pleased and excited at the place where we have come of some great opportunity, and to hear about the experiences of other communities and to hear like organizations in other communities and perspectives is of great value to us. So we also thank again the Saigh Foundation and Wyman for gathering, convening us here for this very important dialogue. Now, I have to tell you, as I transition to Dave, who's been a great leader in this conversation for this community, that he's never said anything this cool that we've got to remember as we walk away. Number one, that research and data is the new sexy. Y'all got to remember that. Y'all got to remember that. And that in order to do this work, we must walk the talk by aligning our hips and our lips. But quite importantly, we remember from Jairus that we must identify young people as co-change makers in this work, because our outcome is changes in every young person's life. So we thank you so much for that, and we thank the leadership of Wyman Center and its president and CEO, Dave Hilliard, who will share with us the final word. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna get this thing going. I can't do it.
Thank you. Starsky, I'm going to start by thanking you for stepping up, being our facilitator today. Thank you to our panelists who came from far corners of the country to be with us and share your stories so candidly. And it was great to hear that the work that we're thinking about embarking upon has a future. Thank you, Amy, Jack, the whole 9 network, for welcoming us to your house, and for all the leadership you're providing in these important conversations about the well-being of our kids. Thanks to all of you for being here. I can look across the audience and see parents and young people and practitioners and investors and funders and community leaders, and that's really heartening to see. Earlier this week, Tony Reed popped into my office, but before I do that, I have an important announcement to make, and Joanne, I need you up here to do this. You know, the Saigh Foundation was established as a legacy gift to this community by Fred Saigh, who was once the owner of the baseball Cardinals. Joanne and I are going to hold hands. We're going to look to heaven, and we're going to say, Fred, we need some help tonight.
Oh, she's got a ring.
Joanne and the Saigh Foundation trustees are special people in this community. Anybody who knows them know they're great champions for this community. A number of years ago, I came to Joanne and the trustees and said, I want to ask you for a big investment, one that'll be a legacy gift to this community. We need in this community to have the capacity to continue to have these kinds of conversations on a regular basis. We weren't asking for program money. We weren't asking for infrastructure for our organization so we could be hot and have technology and data. We were asking to be able to have important conversations about the well-being of our children. Joanne shared in that vision with the trustees and made it possible. So the Saigh Symposium lasts forever. It will occur every year, and we have a little tribute. If you've been to Joanne's office, you know it's adorned with pictures of young people whose programs they've helped. So here's a few more photos to add to the wall, Joanne.
I know you're short on time, so I won't make this long. I do want to tell the young people in this room, though, to please remember and never give up. Fred Saigh was born in 1905 to immigrants. They had no money, and he was one determined guy. He was short in stature. He had a hearing problem. He was diabetic, and he worked his way through college and worked his way through law school, and then decided, and with a lot of sacrifices, and then he decided to buy buildings downtown, renovate them, and sell them for a better price. He did so well that one day when he was talking to the owner of the Cardinals, doing some legal work for him, the man said, "I'm ill and I need to sell the Cardinals. Are you interested?" And Fred said yes. And with a handshake, he bought the Cardinals, sold the buildings downtown, and the rest is history. So you see, he had no help. There were no agencies, and we didn't have beautiful panels like this to help you. He did it on his own. So with all the help that's out there today, you just keep working at it, and someday you'll be so proud of what you've accomplished, and we'll be proud of you. We really care about all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. In just a moment, we'll adjourn to our reception. We hope you can join us for that. We want to thank the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis for hosting that and making that possible. Starsky, I think you nailed the remember lines from today. Lips and hips, and data is the new hot. We've got to remember that, the new sexy. I mentioned earlier, Tony Reed popped in my office. 48 years ago, I was a camp counselor at Camp Wyman, and Tony was an 8-year-old boy in my cabin. He was passing through, having come back to St. Louis for his 40th high school reunion. And he looked on my wall, and right beside the door in my office is a starfish. You all remember that story about the starfish, and the landscape, the beach is littered with them, and the little boys throwing back one at a time, and the guy says, "That can't make a difference," and he said it did for that one. Tony said, "You know, I was that kid. But while I was home on this trip, I drove back to the neighborhood I grew up in." He grew up in the Blue Mar housing projects here in St. Louis. Tony is 48 years old. He's been retired for 5 years. He's got 3 master's degrees and a CPA, and now he's a motivational speaker to young people around the country. I asked for the secret of how he got out when he was 45 years old. But beside that, he said, "Dave, it was great for me." And when I look at my friends across this room and the wonderful programs that are going on, when I meet these wonderful young people here in the room, that work has to continue. But the whole idea behind collective impact and the conversations that we're engaged in today, with all due respect to these wonderful young people who will be the future leaders like Jairus, the work that we need to be engaged in collective impact is for the tens of thousands of young people in this community that we haven't reached yet. And the only way we'll clear the beach and get all those kids back into the ocean is by thinking new, thinking differently. Taking the time to build the infrastructure, taking the time to be data-driven, taking the time to build capacity, taking the time to align ourselves in our workspace with our partners in the relay race to help young people from cradle to career. It's the only way that kind of level of change can come. And it begins with these kinds of conversations. So thank you for being here today and sharing it with us. Off to the cocktails and pop.
Sure.